Okay, let's get started. I just want to start by saying that tonight's broadcast is being sponsored by Mrs. Yael Beagle in memory of her father, Aleh Shalom Max Maman, Machluf Ben Elio, whose yahrzeit is Chof Aleph Nisan. We're on the bottom line of Daf Zayin Amud Beis, and the Gemara tells us, "V'im Amar Torah Ani Malin Oisa L'Sharei Misra." If the woman denies that she did anything wrong, she's adamant in her denial. So then what happens is they continue with the process and they take her to the eastern entrance to the Beis HaMikdash. Frek the Gemara, what do you mean they take her there? Malin Oisa. They take her there, and now turning on to 8a. How could we be taking him there? Hasam Kaim. We just said that she was there already. Effort the Gemara, the Maskinan law, Umachtina law. They take her down and they take her up again to tire her out. Kedeli Yaga. Because we're hoping that if she tires out, she'll just admit and won't force us to go through the process of the site. The Tanya we learned, Rab Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Bezdin Messianis Ha'edim Mimokim L'mokim. When Edom come to say testimony on someone who's going to be condemned to death, we try to tire out their Edom and make them reconsider if they really want to do this, just in case they're not saying the truth. So Messianis Edom Mimokim L'mokim, we drag them from place to place, so they have time to ponder what they're doing. So that if this is not true, they'll reconsider what they're doing and they'll refrain from saying their edus. So to here, we want to get her to admit her guilt and not to force the Sotah process, so we tire her out. I just wanted to say that today is Motzaei Shabbos, which is the third day of Pesach. So we're going to be learning now the three blot that correspond to the first 3 days of Pesach. Shesham Maskenes Asaitis. This Shar Nikner, this eastern gate to the Azara, is the place where the Sotahs drank their water, but it's also the place of other things listed in the Mishnah. So Zok Gemara, Bishlam is Sotahs. We know that the Sotah drinks there. It says Hashem, the Kohen sets her up Lefnei Hashem, and Lefnei Hashem refers to this part of the Azara. Mitzayra Nami, we know the Mitzayra process is there. A woman who has a child, where do we know that she also brings her karbanis at this place? Zakt Gemara, Ilema Mishum, the Asyan, the Kaimina Karbanayu, if it's because they're coming to witness and supervise their karbanis, so that's where they would enter. Tanya, like we learned in the Brisa, you cannot bring a carbon unless the person bringing the carbon is supervising. If that's the case, so then why did the Mishnah limit it to your ledes? There are other people who have to bring carbonis and therefore would also be standing by the gates of Shar Nikna. So why did the Mishnah omit Zavin and Zavais? Zok to Gemara, Einachanami. In fact, those are also people who stand there. Instead of listing off every single person who needs to bring a carbon, the Tana just lists off one of the people, the Yoledos, but of course Zavin and Zavais are the same. Tana Rabbanan. Ein mashkun shtei soitos kachas. You will never do the process of Sotah on two women together. You don't let them drink together. Why? Kidei shaloi yeheliba gas b'chavet. Imagine one of these women are innocent, and she's denying. She's steadfast in her denial, but the second woman is guilty. When she sees the other woman standing beside her, being confident in her denial, that will give her the confidence to deny as well, even though she shouldn't be denying it. So it's better that we only do this process on one woman at a time. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, that's not why. Rather, The reason is because we have a pasuk. The Gemara from the pasuk. Oysa levada. It says in the pasuk, "V'shbi oysa," her herself. No one else is there. So therefore, we know we cannot allow two sodas to drink side by side. Frek the Gemara. What about the Tanakama who gave this reason? Why would the Tanakama give a reason if it's a pasuk? Zok the Gemara Tanakama Reb Shimon. The Tanakama is Reb Shimon, who holds that even though you have a pasuk, we need to explain the reasoning for the pasuk, and based on the reasoning for the pasuk, it will tell us when this halacha applies and when it might not apply. The Dorish Talmud Akra. Reb Shimon always analyzes what is the reason for a mitzvah, and he actually makes decisions as to when to apply this mitzvah and when not to, based on his understanding of the mitzvah. Umatam Amar. All the Tanakama was saying is, what is the reason why the Torah said we shouldn't have two sides drink together? It's because Matam Oisalavada. Why did the Torah say this? Because the Torah doesn't want a woman to be confident wrongfully because of her friend who's also being confident. My benayu, what's the difference if we're only prohibiting two women from drinking together, if it's because of the confidence issue, or if it's just across the board? What if we see this woman is trembling? We know she's afraid. We know she's not confident because of her friend. According to Reb Shimon's reasoning, the Torah's halacha wouldn't apply. But according to the second Tana, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it doesn't make a difference if she's terrified. The Torah says two Sotas cannot drink, period. Frank the Gemara, you're suggesting that if she was terrified, you would be able to allow two Sotas to drink together. How could that be possible? You're never allowed to do two mitzvahs together. Would you let them drink together? The law is you're not allowed to bundle mitzvahs and do multiple mitzvahs together. And the reason why you're not allowed to do that is because it makes it look like you don't really want to do the mitzvahs. You want to kill two birds with one stone. You want to do it wholesale. That's very disrespectful to the mitzvah. The Tanan we learned, you're not allowed to let two soitas drink together. You don't do the process of two tires of mitzvahs on two people at the same time. The halach is of an Eved Ivri does not want to be freed after 6 years. Rather, he wants to stay on as an Eved. Well, the halacha is they take him to a door frame and they drill a hole through his ear. You're not allowed to do that on two of them simultaneously. And then there's the halacha of Egla Rufa. If someone is killed out of a city and we don't know who killed this person, so the city has to bring an Egla Rufa. So the halacha is you don't do two at the same time. Once again, the reason for all these are the same. You don't bundle mitzvahs together. It's just not respectful. So how could the Gemara suggest that we would allow two soitos to drink together? Or if there's one kohen doing both together, that's disrespectful. But if you have two processes that have each their own kohen and each their own focus and each their own attention, then we're not concerned if two things will be happening simultaneously. And that's how Rashi explains. The Rambam actually learns exactly the opposite. The Rambam says if it's one kohen doing it, then it would be allowed. Because one person cannot possibly do two things simultaneously. Men are very bad at multitasking. So if it's one kohen, he's probably going to do one and then the other. But if there's two kohanim, it's actually possible that these two things will happen precisely concurrently at the same time. And therefore, it's not allowed. And on to the next part of the process is the kohen oiches bibigdeh. The kohen grabs her dress and tears it. Tanu Rabbanan. We learned in the Brisa, upara es roisha isha. The Torah tells us that the kohen uncovers the hair, the head of the woman. Only ala roisha I would only know from the pasuk that you uncover her hair. Gufa minayim. How do we know that they uncover her body as well? Right? We said that they open up her dress where her chest is. Tamilomer ha'isha. It says upara es roish ha'isha, as if to tell us that upara es roish, that's item number one, and ha'isha is number two. The woman herself gets uncovered. Frek the Gemara. Once we know we uncover the woman, why do we need to specify her hair? Once we know we uncover her, so we uncover her skin, we uncover her hair. Why do we need the Torah specifically to say that we uncover her hair? It means it doesn't just uncover her hair. If she has a nice hairstyle, in those days they used to braid her hair. He ruins the hairstyle. He undoes her braids because he's trying to make her look not pretty and embarrass her, to sort of intimidate her into being moide, so they don't have to go through the Sotah process. If she was beautiful, then they didn't do this. Why? Remember, Rabbi Yehuda, are you saying that Rabbi Yehuda said that we're concerned that people will look at her and then how they hear her and they'll want to sin with her? Is that what you're saying Rabbi Yehuda holds? And the Rabbanan who say that we uncover her chest no matter what, he's not concerned about hair. We actually found that Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan took exactly the opposite positions, lagabe a different shayla. The Tanya we learned, when a woman is stoned to death, if she's chayiv skila, for instance, she was machal al Shabbos, or a man is stoned to death, they were not dressed when they were stoned to death. But mechasen oisei perik echad milafana, we do allow him to have a small piece of fabric to cover his privates. A woman has two small pieces of clothing to cover her privates in the front and on the back. Because she is kula erva, which Rashi tells us means her erva is visible both from the front and from the back. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, these are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. So clearly Rabbi Yehuda says that when a woman is murdered, they let her be completely undressed, and we don't worry about hair. Yet by Sotah, Rabbi Yehuda says we shouldn't uncover her chest. We're worried about hair. We also have a contradiction in the Chachamim, because the Chachamim said, "Ha'ish niskal orim, ve'eino isha niskal asarim." Although a man is stoned naked, a woman is stoned dressed. So clearly, you see, the Chachamim are worried about the people watching to have a hair. Yet by Sotah, the Chachamim are not concerned at all. Omer Rabba, Zok Rabba, let's at least try to find an answer to the contradiction in Rabbi Yehuda. Why did Rabbi Yehuda say over here the woman should not be uncovered? Because we don't know that she's guilty. She actually might end up being innocent. She may end up being innocent. Now all these young boys who saw this woman not dressed properly are going to be overwhelmed with desire and lust for her. That's not a good situation. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda wants her to be covered. But also, when we're talking about a woman who's about to be killed, there's no problem they'll lust after her because she's going to be dead. Also, the moment they undress her, they kill her. So there's not going to be any hair because there's not going to be hair after a dead person. If you're going to tell me once they see this woman not dressed, they'll become full of lust. And now, even though she's dead, then now they'll lust after other women. That's not how our hormones work. We know when you see something, there's a Yetzer Hara. So if they saw this woman, they're going to have a Yetzer Hara for this woman. But if she's no longer available because she's killed, that's not going to cause them to lust after a different woman. So that answers the contradiction in Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda kasha, the Rabbanan like kasha. You only have a contradiction in Rabbi Yehuda, which you did answer satisfactorily. But what about the contradiction in the Rabbanan? Like kasha the In fact, there's no contradiction in Rabbi Yehuda, as we explained. There's a problem of giru yetzer by a woman who might come out alive. But there's no problem of giru yetzer when there's a woman who's going to be killed. The Rabbanan, and let's turn over on to Daf Yes, I'm in base. Rabbanon, loy kasha, nami loy kasha. Why? Haka taimamai. What is the reason why we want her to be undressed? It's so that women should see what's happening to this woman, and it'll be a terrible deterrent. V'nivosru kol hanoshim. All women will see what this woman is going through, and it will make them stay very far away from these type of affairs. That's required by Sotah. But when you're killing a woman, the fact that she's being killed, that's a very, very strong deterrent. Therefore, there's no reason for her to be undressed. The deterrent will be there. By the Sotah, she needs to be undressed because that creates a greater deterrent. And if you're going to ask me, why should you only have one deterrent where she's being killed? Let her have a second deterrent where she's also going to be humiliated because she'll be undressed. Amar Rab Nachman said, Amar Rabba Baravua, Amar Kral, the Pesach says, which means you have to love your friend like you love yourself. And therefore, pick a good misa. So Rab Nachman says, according to the Chachamim, even though we're killing her, we do want to protect her pride a little bit and not make her be undressed. Dr. Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda said she should be undressed. So are you going to tell me that Rabbi Yehuda, the Tana, is arguing on Rabbi Nachman, the Amoira? Rabbi Nachman can't argue on the Tana. Rabbi Nachman Tanoi, are you telling me that Rabbi Nachman's words are only consistent according to the Rabbana, not according to Rabbi Yehuda? That's not logical. So everybody holds brother like Misa Yafa. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, a woman prefers to be killed when she's naked. One Madamar holds that she'd rather be killed naked, like Rabbi Yehuda holds. You know why? Because if she's naked, she'll die faster. And if she dies faster, there's less pain. So she'd rather suffer humiliation, but less pain. It's exactly the opposite. She doesn't want pain. So therefore, she'd rather to the contrary, she'd rather suffer more pain but not be embarrassed. So she'd rather be dressed during the skila, because then she won't be so embarrassed, but she'll suffer more pain in her death. Now, before we continue, I'm not. If Reb Daniel is saying shiur tonight, I was under the impression that he wasn't. But if he is, I'll move on to a different channel. So I don't know who D is. Is D Daniel? Akiva is here, I see. So I'm not sure. So if Daniel is here, please identify yourself, and I'll gladly move to a different channel. What
was the giveaway that it was me, Yosy? What?
I felt Kedusha coming out of the screen. Gewaltig. Hayu aleh klezov. She. I apologize. I skipped a line. The Mishnah tells us when she was wearing nice white clothing, they make her wear black clothing, which are not as pretty. Tana, however, if this particular woman looked good in black, then you have her wear ugly clothing. If she was wearing jewelry, then you make her take it off. That's Pashat. We're trying to make her look ugly. We take off her clothing. We give her ugly clothing. Surely we are not going to let her wear jewelry. No, maybe for character. She looks ridiculous if she would be wearing jewelry in the nude. That makes her look extra ridiculous. That's an extra deterrent. It's extra humiliating. Like people say, you have a naked shliach, but he's wearing your shoes. Kamash Malon, that we don't let her wear jewelry anyway. Then they bring a rope to tie her around, since they tore her clothing, and it's more than that. One of the items of jewelry that the Mishnah lists that they take off is like a half a moon choker, the shape of a banana. And what they did with it is, when she wrapped her dress around, it connected to her two collars that held it on. The moment they took that piece of jewelry away, now her dress would fall off. So they wrapped a rough, crude rope, which was called a chevel mitri, around her chest to hold her dress up. So the Gemara wants to know the purpose. What was the purpose of why they made this process that they put this around her? Chevel mitri, is it because the only reason why they have it is just as a practical thing to keep her clothing up? From upon her. Who is that the reason? And if that's the case, even if they didn't use this ugly rope, even if they had a nice Hamoed belt, that would be good enough. Or it's because we have a brisa that says, she dressed up for him in this beautiful, nice, fine line belt. Therefore, we used an ugly type of belt, an ugly type of rope to tie her up. And therefore, it would have to be an ugly belt. We actually have a Mishnah that tells us the real reason behind this. The whole purpose of this is to keep your begadim up. So yeah, you don't want to use something pretty, but if that's all you had, you can use something pretty. The Mishnah is very contradictory, because first the Mishnah says, which means anybody who wants to come see her can see her, meaning even men could look at this woman in this state. But then the Mishnah says, or let's see this inside the Gemara, men and women both are allowed to see this woman in her undressed state. But then the Mishnah says, only females are allowed to see her. So the question is, are men allowed to see the woman, the Sotah, in this state? When the Mishnah says at the beginning, it's referring to women. Whoever wants to come see her, meaning women, could come, not men. Doesn't it say whoever wants to come see her, Raya may see her? Katani? So everybody means everybody, even men. You're right. Anybody who wants to watch this spectacle, of course, because he wants to pound into his brain the severity of such a terrible affair. Seeing such a spectacle will put the fear of God in you. Therefore, men and women both are allowed. However, for women, it's mandatory. They must watch. All of the women need to watch this and really be deterred. So they shouldn't do like this nose of this site. So men can watch, women must watch. Now we're going to get into beautiful Agadah to Gemara from now until the end of the parak. Fascinating Gemaras that we're about to learn. Zok to Gemara, in a midah, the way a person behaves, that's how some people read a Mishnah. Others read it So I saw a little bit of a difference. Some people put the comma before the ba, and some people put the comma after the ba. But it means the same thing. We treat a person the way they're treated. Now, the Chinuch says, don't think for a second that Hashem is petty like we are. Well, if you treat me bad, I'll treat you bad. That's what Shalom Zok. This is not a guidance. It's not telling you what you should do. And it's not telling you what Hashem does. What it's saying is Hashem is only good. No matter how bad you do, Hashem only wants to give you good. Nervos. A person has to be a vessel that can hold, that can contain the good that Hashem wants to deliver. Your vessel can only contain the good that Hashem wants to deliver to the extent that you behave properly. So although Hashem wants you to give you only good, don't mess it up by misbehaving, which will cause that Hashem's goodness won't be able to reach you. Now, that's how the chinuch works. The Marsha has a beautiful thought, and he says the reason why Hashem treats you the same way you behave is to help you. That chas v'sholem, if you have to suffer a punishment, chas v'sholem, if you have to get an oynish, if it's done in such a way where it mirrors what you did, it will be easier for you to acknowledge and to realize and to absorb and to accept that this is midah keneged your avera. And when you acknowledge that, of course, that's easier for you to do tshuva. So that's why it works this way. So let's look at the details. He kashtas atzmal avera. She picks herself up to do an avera. Hamokam nivla. The Torah makes her menuvelas. He gilsa as atzmal avera. She uncovered herself to do an avera. Hamokam gila Allah. Hashem uncovered her and publicized what she did. The avera started with her yerech. And there's two pshatim in what it means. Either that's the first part of the body that feels good during this avera, or it means she used her legs to walk around and to make sure she would be noticed by people. So the yerech started the avera. Therefore, the yerech is chila b'avera tchila v'yachagach button, and then there's stuff.
How much?
Lefichach, therefore, tiloka hayerech tchila. In the klala, the kohen tells the lady, your yerech will collapse first, the yachach button, and then the stomach. The sharka leguf lekpala. Don't think that the klala is limited to those two parts of her body. Rather, her whole body will collapse. But this is the order. So it's very important to note, and we're going to see this shortly in the Gemara, that the kohen tells the woman, your yerech will collapse, and then your stomach will collapse. That's how he presents the klala to her. But in fact, in reality, the way it occurred, which the Torah says a moment later, is that the water destroys her as it comes in there. So the first place it goes is into her stomach. In fact, her stomach collapses first, and only then does her yerech actually collapse. Rabbi Yosef, Afal Gav, the Midah B'Tela, even though we no longer have Mises Bezdin, because the Bezdin is not in practice anymore, nevertheless, B'Midah Loibat, the carrying out of the Mises Bezdin has not been bottled, it's still in existence. From the time the Beis Hamikdash was charved, Af al pi shebatla Sanhedrin, even though the Sanhedrin is no longer around, Arba Mises lebatl. We still have Arba Mises Bezdin. Frag the Gemara, how could you say that? V'habatlu. They don't carry it. The Bezdin doesn't no longer carries out the Arba Mises Bezdin. Ella, what it means to say is din Arba Mises lebatlu. People still suffer Arba Mises. They still suffer Arba Mises. Although Bezdin is not carrying it out, Hashem makes it happen. For instance, if someone was chayiv skila, he'll fall off a roof, or he'll be attacked by a chaya, which Rashi says the chaya jumps on someone and then drags him to the floor. That's like skila. Or mishin is chayiv shreifa. If someone is chayiv shreifa, he'll either succumb in a fire, or he'll be bit by a snake whose poison burnt someone from the inside out. Mishin is chayiv hariga. If someone is chayiv hereg, which is his head supposed to be cut off with a sword, he'll either be given over to the malchus to be killed. He'll get a guillotine treatment, or listed by the love, or he'll be attacked by robbers and they'll chop his head off. Mishin is chayiv chanika. Someone who is chayiv chanika, either he will drown, or he'll die with a disease where his breathing passages swell up and he chokes to death. So this Gemara is very, very fascinating, because there was a minhag in the time of the Chassam Sofer where if somebody was killed by the Malchus, or if somebody was murdered, they would not bury him with the rest of the Jews. Because the halacha is someone who's killed with Mises Bezdin, he's not buried b'kivrei Avosov. He's buried in a separate section with people who are killed machmas Bezdin. So if someone ended up having such a misa, a misa that seems to mirror one of the misas bezdin, he will not be buried in his normal burial spot. He'll be buried in a separate place for misas bezdin, highly humiliating permanently. So a Shiloh once came to the Chadam Sofer where somebody was murdered, and they wanted to know, should we bury him the Kivrei Avoisov in his normal plot, or must we bury him in an isolated area? Zok the Chasam Sofer, Avada, you must bury him with his family plot. And Chas v'Sholem, you're not allowed to bury him with Chayv Misas Bezdin. Just because there's such a minig, I wasn't moicha. But if you're asking me, Avada, you must bury him with his family. Chas v'Sholem, just because someone who's Chayv Misas Bezdin, just because all Chayv Misas Bezdin will get Hariga, that doesn't mean everybody who got Hariga was Chayv Misas Bezdin. So Zok Chasam Sofer, Avada, you should ignore that, and Avada, you bury him in his regular plot. But there was another fascinating tshuva, the mind-blowing, fascinating tshuva from Rabbi Yaakov Emden that all the place can freak out about and argue with, including Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. And this is the tshuva. A woman was mizana, a married woman was mizana, and she actually was pregnant with a mamzer. And she asked the Shaila, since I'm mechuyev chenek, and the Gemara says that I'm going to somehow suffer from chenek, so now my child doesn't really have a life. Gavra katila. So may I have an abortion? May I abort and kill this child? Because anyway, this child is dead because this child is part of me and is mechuyev misas best. Funny, she didn't ask if she can commit suicide. She just asked if she could kill her baby. And Rabbi Yaakov Emden allowed her to kill her baby. And all of the poskim scream, chas v'sholem, that's murder, it wouldn't be allowed. But it's a fascinating shaila that's directly an outcome of our Heilige Gemara. Zok the Heilige Gemara weiter, the first wide line. Tanya, how you Rabbi Omer, minayin shebemida shada moedit ba moedit l'loi. How do you know Hashem gives midah connected midah? Shenemar, it says in the pasuk b'safsa, which Rashi says as, which Rashi explained as b'soich oisa sa atzma, using the same measurement. So is a measurement, with that same measurement, b'shelcha tirivena. When Hashem sends you out to punish you, when you're being sent away to be punished, la'avadoin, you're punished with the same measure with which you did the aveira. Ainli al-asa. I would think this only applies to a big aveira. Asa is a big measurement. How do you know this midah connected midah applies in tiny quantities as well? Minayin rabbis Tarkov, the Chatzi Tarkov, Kav, the Chatzi Kav, Roiva, the Chatzi Roiva, Haimein, v'ochla minayin, but loimer, kikol sa'oin, soyin barash. Every tiny little amount is going to be paid back for with a rash. So I just want to stop here for 1 second. One of the measurements that was just listed here was the uchla. Does the measurement of uchla sound familiar to anybody? Because it should sound familiar. Because 3 blot ago, we learned that a person should have how much gaiva? A shmini shebeshminis, a tiny little measure of gaiva. And Rashi says there that it's an uchla. It's this small shiur called an uchla. That's how much gaiva someone is supposed to have. Talmud Chacham is supposed to have. Zok the Gemara weiter. Now there's a famous saying that when people are collecting money and they get a little bit at a time, they say "Kol pruta upruta mitztarach l'cheshem min hagadol," as if that's a good thing. We're going to soon see that saying is not from a good place. Uminayin shel kol pruta upruta mitztarefes l'cheshem min gadol, which Rashi tells us that every little aveira, although Hashem doesn't punish for it right away, He keeps it and watches it, and then when you hit critical mass, then Hashem will punish you for all those little aveiras. Although the Likutei Rashi, which I don't have on this Gemara here, but I saw it over Yom Tov, says that it also applies for good things. When we do good things, Hashem wants to pay us back. Hashem will wait till it piles up so we can buy us and give us a beautiful, beautiful schar. So how do you know it's Mistar Cheshbon Gadol? Talmud Leimer Achas la Achas Limsei Cheshbon. Every little detail is going to be part of the cheshbon. The Chen Matzinu b'Sotah. We find the same thing by a Sotah. Shebemida shemadada ba madadullah. That's how we treated her. He amda al Pesach beisa lira isloi. She stood by the door of her house so that when he passes by, she would be seen by him. You want to be seen? Therefore, the Kohen makes her stand by Shar Niknar, the front main entrance of the Azara, where everyone will see the horrible thing that she's accused of. He Pirsaloi Sudrin Noyin al Roisha, she put beautiful tichos on her head to lure him, to seduce him. Lefichach Kohen Noitel Kappa or Kipa Me al Roisha, Manicha Tachas Reglev. That's where the Kohen takes off her hair covering and puts it on the floor. He keeps the light panel. She pitched her face to be beautiful. Lefichach, therefore, turning on to Daf Tes Amid Aleph. Panel Marikos. As her face explodes, it turns green. He kichla lo eineha. She made her eyes beautiful with eyeshadow, mascara. Lefichach eineh boltos. As she blows up, her eyes bulge. She kalalaya Saira. She braided her hair so beautifully. Lefichach koyin soiser esaira. The koyin ruins her hairstyle. He harasaloi beetzba. She motioned him, "Come here, my friend," with her finger in a seductive fashion. Lefichach tziparnea noishris. Her nails fell out. He chagreloi betzilzel. We had this Gemara just a little while ago. She put on a nice, beautiful belt. Lefichach koyin mevi chevel hamitzri. V'koy shalom l'mayla midadel. He pashtaloi serecha. She stretched out her yerech to him. Lefichach yerecha nefeles. That's why her leg will collapse. He kiblasoi al presa. She took him on her stomach. Lefichach bitna tzava. Her stomach will blow up. He achilasoi madane olam. She wined and dined him. So the madane olam is the dine part. We'll get to the wine part in a second. Lefichach karbana meichel behema. The carbon that she brings is made out of barley, which is meichel behema. He yishkiseyu yain meshubach b'kosos meshubachim. She served him delicious wine in the fanciest goblets. Lefichach koyin mashke mayim hamorim b'makida shel cheres. Therefore, she is served the mayim hamorim in ugly earthenware kelim. It's also a siman. It's brought down, I think, in the Ben Yoda. It's also a siman that cheres. The only way you could be matar cheres is to destroy it. Glass, on the other hand, doesn't even become usher because it's not absorbing. So we tell her, you're going to be like cheres and you're going to be broken and dead for this avera. He also beseser. She did the avera, secluded. Yosy beseser al yain. The Rebbeinu Shalom himself, some ba'panim, is focusing on her. Shenemar says in the pasuk, "Va'ayin noyef shomer nesha." Someone who wants to do znos will do it at night. Lemar, to say, "Lo yishureni ayin." No eye should see me. And the end of the pasuk is v'seiser panim yasim. But the Rebbeinu Shalom will place his focus on this balavera and punish it. The Veracher, he also b'seiser. She did her avera in seclusion. Amakam pirsama begalim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu broadcasted her avera for everyone to see. Shenemar techasa sinna b'machayin. Someone who tries to hide the hated things, the sins. B'machayin, in seclusion at night. Tegalera also because their misdeeds will be publicized forever. Fact the Gemara, we had 3 psukim that we just had on Amud Beis when we were discussing paying back. We had the Besasa, we had the pasuk of Sa'in, and we had the pasuk of Achas. So the Gemara wants to know why we needed all 3 of these psukim. That Hashem pays us back for every little avera. Why do we need the pasuk of Chol, Sa'in, Sayan, Berash, Lamali? Why do we need that pasuk to tell us about every little avera? Zok to Gemara lechamida, to tell you the added information that Hashem punishes us mida keneged mida. The same way we sin, that's how Hashem will punish us. The first pasuk just tells you that Hashem keeps record of every little aveira. But who said he pays us back in the same fashion? That we know from Kol Sa'oin. Why do we need a pasuk of Besaso B'Shalcha to Riveno? Lomali, because that's just talking about bigger aveiros, but it's telling you the same thing. It's Midah Connected Midah. So Gemara, it's teaching us a new halacha. The Amar Rav China bar Papa, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Nifer Min HaUma Achas Shilucha. Hashem doesn't punish an piecemeal. Hashem is going to wait till they did enough aveiros that Hashem could completely wipe them out. Shenever Besaso B'Shalcha. Break the Gemara, is that so? I'm going to show you that the Mitzrayim were punished 3 times. If your shita is that Hashem waits till they need to be totally destroyed, how is it possible that Hashem punished Mitzrayim 3 times? He should have punished them once, destroyed them, and they would be done with. In the dream of the Sarah Mashkin, there were 3 kaisas. What are these 3 kaisas referring to? Lama, Akas Sheshosas B'mei Moshe. The first kaisa was the patch that Parah got in the times of Moshe, the patch that we're living in the Yom Tov of right now. The Akas Sheshosas B'mei Parah Nechei. There was another beating that they got in the days of Parah Nechei. I believe Rashi tells us that Nebuchadnezzar beat them bad, beat the Mitzrayim, and the 3rd time, the Achas Shasida Lishtois in Chaveriseh. The Asad Lavoi, when all the nations of the world are going to be punished, the Mitzrayim are going to get a nice dose of punishment then as well. So this is a steer to what we just learned, that Hashem punishes the nations once and wipes them out. But if you want to say that, yes, we talk about the 3 Mitzrayims, but they're not the same peoples. Different peoples lived in Mitzrayim and took on the name of the Egyptian nation, but there were really 3 different peoples. And each one was completely destroyed at their destruction. But we know it was the same peoples. He goes, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Min Yomin Gera Mitri Hoyel Lichaver Mitalmidi Rabbi Kiva. In Rabbi Kiva's yeshiva, I learned there, and I had a friend there by the name of Min Yomin Hager. And we know that a Mitzri, the Torah says for 3 generations, a Mitzri may not join Kal Yisrael, which means the Mitzri who converted, he became a Ger. He could not marry a Jew. What if he marries another woman Mitzri, a Mitzris, and they had a child? That's called a Mitzri Shenis. That child may not either marry a Jew. But if that child marries another 2nd generation Mitzri and they have a child, that's a 3rd generation Mitzri. That person, in fact, may marry a Jew. So Minyamin Ger said, Omar, he said as follows: Omar Minyamin Ger Mitzri, Ani Mitzri Rishon. I am a 1st generation Mitzri, B'nesasni Mitzris Rishon. And they married a woman who's also a 1st generation. Ati Livni, who am I going to find a wife for my son? Mitzris Shniya, a 2nd generation Mitzris. Kidei Sheyehei Ben Beni Muter Lovoi Bekal. This way, my grandchild will be able to marry a Jew. So, if today's Mitzrim aren't the same Mitzrim that the Torah was referring to, when the Torah said a Mitzri cannot marry a Jew until the 3rd generation, so what is Minyamin worried about? Ela itmar hachi itmar. Because of that, we have to say, in fact, that when Hashem punishes non-Jewish nations, He does not necessarily destroy them. And since He does not necessarily destroy them, it's possible that the Mitzrayim are still around. Rather, Amar Rav China bar Papa, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Nifra Min HaMelech Ad Shas Shiluchai. If there's a goyish king that's doing aveiros, Hashem won't punish him piecemeal. He'll wait till he can be totally condemned, and then he'll wipe the king out permanently. And never besaso b'shalcha teriva. Rashi brings up a very important point, and that is that Rabbi Kiva told Minyamin that you're completely mistaken. In fact, Sancheirav came and mixed up all the nations. So we don't know who anybody is anymore. So really, Minyamin's whole assumption was wrong. But nevertheless, we still have our kasha. As Tosfos explains, you're right. Minyamin might not really be a mitzvah, might be mixed up. But the mitzvahs are still in existence. This is because Sancherev mixed them all up. It doesn't mean that they're not in existence. That's what the kasha was from. So the Gemara had to backtrack and say that nations could survive, but kings that are wicked, they will not survive. Zog to Gemara, Ameimar Masni Lahad Rab China Bar Papa Aha. Ameimar learned Rab China Bar Papa's halacha about Hashem waits to condemn somebody completely. He learns it regarding a different pasuk. Mal Dechsiv, Kani Hashem. The Rebbe Hashem said, Am Hashem, Loi Shanisi. Now the pasuk shot of Loi Shanisi is, I don't shame. But we're going to learn, the Gemara Hashem means, I don't have to punish someone twice. Because when I punish them once, they're dead. They're gone. For the Goyim. But my dear children, the children of Yaakov, Loi Chilisam, you I will not destroy. Ani Hashem. So we darshan. Loi Shanisi means Lohi Kesi Lo Umava Shanisi Lo. I never had to punish a nation twice because I wipe them out the first time. But b'nei Yaakov Loi Chilisam. But you, b'nei Yaakov, I won't destroy you. I'll punish you a little bit at a time. In Hazinu, in V'Dosh Bracha, in Hazinu, it says Chitzai Achalabam. I'm going to use up all my punishments on the Eden, all my arrows. Chitzai Kolan, my punishments will get used up. The Heinelan Kolan. Yisrael will not be destroyed; they will survive. Amar Rav Amnuna Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Nifram Min Ha'adam. Hashem doesn't punish a person. Ashum Hagoy. The smallest also until his bucket is full. Never b'maloi sveiko yetzer. So the Mefarshim tell us, beautiful, HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves Klal Yisrael. So therefore, instead of waiting till the reveres add up where they need complete destruction, Hashem punishes us a little by a little at a time, so that we could survive it. Mashenkin, the Goyim, Hashem lets it pile up so we can condemn them completely. There's a Gemara that tells us that explains this with a beautiful mashal. There was a king whose son was misbehaving. So he told the son, if you misbehave, I'm going to take this big boulder and throw it on you and kill you. And what happened is his son misbehaved. So now the king has a problem. He's literally between a rock and a hard place. If he throws the rock at his son, he's killing his son. He doesn't want to kill his son. But if he doesn't throw the rock, then he's lying. So what did the king do? He had his servants chop the rock up into a whole bunch of tiny little pebbles. And every day he threw a pebble at his son. This way, he was able to throw the whole rock at his son, but in such a way where his son wouldn't be hurt. Gewaltig. So that's how Kodesh Baruch Hu treats us. He has to punish us, but he'll do it a little bit at a time. So whenever we have an inconvenience, a frustration, we should know that's Hashem who loves us, because he's giving us these frustrations so that we could slowly pay up our debt and not chas v'sholom be condemned. So the next time you stick your hand in your pocket because you want to pull out a 50-cent Zirchem Binyamin or $1 Zirchem Binyamin, and a $50 comes out, and the Meshulach in front of you is salivating, and you have to put it back, you should know that's Alman HaShemayim, and Hashem loves us. Zok the Heilige Gemara weiter. Dorish Rab Chanina Bar Papa. My Dichsiv, it says in the pasuk, Raninu Tzadikim B'Hashem, the Tzadikim sing Hashem's praises, La Yisharim to the Tzadikim, Nova Sila, it's good to praise the Rebbeinu Shalom. But we're darshaning it differently. Atruki Nova as in beautiful, as in nice, Ela Nova as a dwelling, Nova Sehila. The beautiful dwelling of Tzadikim lasts forever. Ze Moshe v'David. These are talking about the beautiful construction projects that Moshe was involved with, and that David HaMelech was involved with. Shaloi shaltu soineim b'maaseim. Their enemies never were able to rob and pillage and steal these beautiful things that they made. David, Tichsiv, Tavu ba'aretz she'areh. David made David. He built a beautiful city, and it had big, beautiful golden gates. Those golden gates, when the Churban came, sunk into the ground so that the Goyim couldn't steal them and take them away. So they remained sunk in the ground, and they were never taken away. And Moshe, what was his construction project? Damar Mar, Yishanivne Mikdash Rishon, when the base of Mikdash was built and we no longer needed the Mishkan, Nignaz Oil Mayid. The oil Mayid was not destroyed. It was preserved and it was hidden away. Karasha of the beams, karasha of the hooks, bricha of the poles that went to connect the beams, the amudov and the posts for the outside that held up the parechas in, the adonov and the sockets that held the beams up. Heicha. So where are if they weren't destroyed? So where are they? Where is the Mishkan today? There's passageways, caves, and tunnels underneath the Kaisel, under the Heichel, not under the Kaisel. Under the Heichel, that's where these are hidden. We'll have to leave it to Indiana Jones to find them. Tanu Rabbanon. The Rabbanon taught us. Sotah nosna einea b'misha eina royal. The Sotah put her eyes on someone who wasn't for her. Another man. She doesn't get to keep that other man. That other man is usher. She's usher l'ba'alu l'boil. And even her husband, who she did have, natlu mimena, that gets taken away from her. And that's a lesson. If you lust after something that's not yours, what you're seeking, you're not going to get, but you're even going to lose what you have. And even what you have, you're going to lose. And let's turn on to Daf Tes Amud Beis. We find this with the Nachash, with Chava. He wanted Chava. He wanted Chava to become his wife. He wanted to get Adam killed so he can take over. He didn't get it. He didn't get his Chava. And even the benefits that Hashem gave him, were taken away from the Nachash. And you know what he had by the way Hashem cursed him. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ani amarti yehi melech al kol behema v'chaya. You are going to be the king of the animal kingdom. V'achshav arahu mikol behema mikol chayis hasadeh. You're cursed from them all. Ani amarti yahalech b'kumish kufa. You originally were able to walk upright. Achshav al gechoyna yelech. You'll walk on your belly. You'll slither on your belly. Ani amarti yehi macholim ma'achal odam. You will eat the food of people. Achshav now offer yoichal, you will eat earth. Who Amar? You, Nachash said, Ahariga Sodom, I'm going to kill Adam, the Esther Schabad al Mary Chav. Achshav, Chava won't even look at you. Eva Artish Beinecha Ubeina Isha Ubein Zarecha Ubein Zara. She'll always hate you, and your people will always hate the snake. So that explains why women hate snakes. Question is, why do women hate spiders? That I don't know where that comes from. Maybe someone can tell me where it comes from, why women hate spiders. Anyway, because
they remind them of snakes. That's all. Everything is a reminder of something else.
We find this with Cain as well. Cain was jealous of the two sisters that were born with Hevel. He wanted them, and he got nothing. The Korach, he wanted the kahuna. He lost whatever he had. Bilam wanted the wealth of Balak. He lost everything. Vidoyek, he wanted the recognition of the knowledge in Torah that David HaMelech had. Achitophel wanted the kingdom, and he lost it. Gehazi wanted the money of Namoin, and he was instructed not to take it. He took it, and he lost everything. He became a Motzaei for the rest of his life. Avshalom wanted his father's kingdom. Va'adoniyo wanted the Pilegesh of his father, and Uziyo, the king Uziyo, wanted kahuna as well. And Haman wanted the kingdom of Achashverosh. Now there's a saying, the Lublina strikes again. This daf we learned on the second day of Pesach, which was Haman's Yartzak, which was the day of the Suda of Esther Amalka. They looked and they lusted after what was not appropriate for them, and they lost everything. The Satmar Rebbe asks a very good kasha. In the Seres Dibros of Hamoed, it says Eshes Reyacha, Abdoi, Sharei, Chamoiroi. It lists Beisai, whatever you can want. It lists off you shouldn't lust, and then the pasuk ends off with V'chol Asher L'Reyacha. Correct the Satmar Rebbe, what is missing in the list? We already listed off every conceivable thing that someone could be jealous of as a friend for. Why does the Torah then have to say B'chol Asher L'Reach? Zok T'Sam Rebbe, we like to cherry pick the items that we're jealous of our friends for. Oh, yeah, I wish I had his car. I wouldn't want to be married to his wife. I wish I had his wife, but I wouldn't want to be the son-in-law of his father-in-law. I wish I had his employees, but I would never want to be in his business. Zok T'Sam Rebbe, a person's situation is one package deal. You can't cherry pick what you want. So therefore, don't just look at one thing that your friend has. Look at his whole package, and then you'll be much happier with your package. And therefore the Kohen talks about her Yerech first. So there you see the Kohen talks first about her legs, her hips collapsing, and then there's Tzava. But Vaksiv, there's another pasuk that says the belly first. Vitzaf Sabitna, and then V'nafli Yerech. Amar Abaye said, Ki layit, when the Kohen was cursing her, telling her what she'll be cursed with, layit chila Yerech v'hader belten. V'hader batan light. First he cursed the Yerech and then the beten. But in actuality, umaya kibatku, but when the mayim impacts her body, ki yurchayu batki, they destroy her body as it comes into contact with her body. Therefore, beten bereisha, first her stomach collapses, v'hader Yerech. In fact, Gemara, but the Klola Nami Ksiv, when it talks about the Klola in the second pasuk, the pasuk says that the Kohen tells her, Litzbo Spet V'lampol Yarech, which is the right order. So to Gemara, and this is one of the most fascinating Gemaras we could ever learn. Hahu de Moidel Kohen the Beten Bereisha V'hader Yerech Shlo Lehotzi Laz Al Mayim Amor. If we just left it at the curse of the Kohen, that lists off the Yerech first. He had to correct the record and tell her it's the Beten that's going to explode first. You know why? Because then people will say, it doesn't work. Imagine you're standing there watching a woman blow the smithereens. Since it wasn't in the exact order that the Kohen said, you're going to machavek the whole thing. That's how people are. They'll pick a detail and they'll throw out literally the baby with the bathwater. They'll throw out the lesson from this fascinating, amazing, awe-inspiring spectacle over a technicality. That's how people are. They want to machavek. The Gemara, the Mishnah now talks about the sugya of Shimshon. Shimshon is a very interesting...
Like lawyers. I can't resist because I know Dave Cutner's. Like lawyers. Perfect case. They'll find the one detail and blow up the whole case, no pun intended, because of a specific detail. Yeah. The glove won't fit.
Good. Shimon once told me, a good lawyer finds a needle pinhole and pounds away at it until he could drive a truck through it. Oh, Shimshon, halach achenov. Shimshon, before we learn about Shimshon, because we're going to learn things that are extremely derogatory about Shimshon. So we need to know, Shimshon was a kadosh v'tahar. As the Gemara says, the Shechina was with him wherever he went. Yet we find he did things that are seemingly very inappropriate. So we need to understand that Shimshon was holy, but he was trying to degrade and hurt and beat up the Palestinians, the Pelishtim, without them counterattacking the. So he engaged in guerrilla warfare. So he had to create a pretext with which to attack the Pelishtim where it wouldn't be perceived as an attack from the Jews. Rather, it would look like a domestic dispute. So Shimshon became a womanizer. Shimshon wasn't a womanizer. Shimshon was a Kodesh V'Torah, but he took on the persona and the role of a womanizer so that he can get involved in different relationships that then he can use to create a pretext for domestic violence. And that's how everything looked to the Pelishtim. But that was done by Mesiras Nefesh b'Kedusha. And we will soon see the Gemara that will show us that Shimshon was a Kodesh V'Torah. Shimshon halach acher eino. Shimshon followed his eyes. And just to go through quickly an abridged version of the story of Shimshon, is first he was a Nazir from birth, that we know. He was a Kodesh Vatar. Then he decided that he wanted to marry a Pelishti woman from Timnah. And his parents thought that it was Me'Hashem Yatza Davar. He went to marry this woman. Then later on, in that story, by the Shabbos Sheva Brachos or whatever the celebration was, he was sitting around with her family and her friends, and he asked them a riddle. And if you could solve this riddle, I'll give you a whole lot of money. And what happened is she divulged the answer to the riddle. And because of that, it costed him a fortune. He was upset. And her father ended up taking her back. So he went and used that as a pretext to kill about 1,000 Plishtim. He killed about 1,000 Plishtim with the jawbone of a chamor, the jawbone of an ass, the same weapon that many business deals get killed with every day. And then there was a nace that he was very thirsty after he killed all these Plishtim, and he was very thirsty. Hashem made that water should come out of the jawbone so he was able to drink. Then what happened is he decided that he's going to vandalize the Plishtim again under the pretext of he's angry at them. And what he did was he took 300 foxes and tied their tails together and attached to each tail his torch, and he let them loose. So they basically ran in a column across all the Pelishti fields and burnt down all their produce, costing millions of dollars of devastation and damage. Again, it was a domestic dispute from their perspective, so the Eden revenge was never taken on the Eden. There was no retribution.
What you're saying is that they looked at Shimshon, it was one of their own?
Not so much as one of their own, but it's a domestic dispute. It wasn't a Jewish thing. It was this wild man who got involved with our nation. Then
he wasn't meddling in the election results. Is that what you're saying, or he was meddling?
I don't know how he meddled, but he definitely caused them a lot of trouble. He was definitely destroying their economy. Then he ended up going to a Zoyna in Aza, and in the house of the Zoyna he fell asleep. So the Plishtim tied him up and thought they would capture him, and instead they tied him to the doorpost of the city in Aza. He literally just ripped it right off the wall. And then he married Delilah, who ruined him. She was the one who found out from him the secret of his strength. She gave it up to the Goyim. They cut his hair, and then he ended up in chains, in jail. And there was some type of party. They wanted to parade him out there. They blinded him. They made fun of him. And he was standing there in this big, huge auditorium that was held up by two pillars. He davened to the Rebbeinu Shalom, give me my strength back one last time so I could bring this building down. And he was the star of the show. He brought the house down. And he killed all the Plishtim, and he died with them. And there's the famous saying of Thomas Nafshi and Plishtim. So based on that story, the Gemara now takes us through the story with the Midrash. Shimshon halach acharino. He followed his eyes. He followed his eyes, and he wanted to marry this Pelishti woman from Timnah. That's why one of his punishments is that his eyes were poked out. Avshalom had beautiful hair. He showed off his hair. His end was he got hung from his hair. He was born 10 pilakshim of his father. Why did he do something so crazy? The Mefarshim tell us that Achitophel gave him this eitzah. How in the world? What Avshalom did was he needed to get a following. Why would anybody follow him? So he went to his father David HaMelech and he asked his father, "Can you please write me a letter that 2 people have to accompany? I need an escort. I'm traveling." And he went to 2 people with the letter and he took them in. Then he took the same letter and he went to another 2 people and another 2 people. So he reused that letter so many times until he had a huge following that his father helped him get. And he's using that against his father. And many of the people who he fooled into taking with him were members of the Sanhedrin. Achitophel told him, if you're rebelling against your father, everyone's going to leave you. You know why they're going to leave you? Because sure, now you're rebelling. But at the end of the day, one day you're going to make up with him, and then you're not going to get punished. They're going to get punished. So you need to show them that you mean business. If you're going to rape the temple action of your father, then they know you mean business. They know you're never going to make peace with your father, and then they'll feel more confident in remaining with you. He was stabbed with 10 lances. Since he stole 3 things. He stole his father's heart, meaning he got his father to write him a letter to build the army that he was going to use against his father. Because many of the people who he recruited with his father's letter were Bezdin, V'lev Yisrael, and all of Klal Yisrael. He was stabbed with 6 staffs. Now, until now, we talked about how there's a bad midah connected people, but there's a good side, there's a flip side to it as well. Miriam waited 1 hour for her father. Yisrael, when she had Saras, waited for her 7 days. Miriam. Yosef buried his father Yaakov. He was the greatest because he was the king. And who came with him because he was the king? What a great honor he did for his father. So Hashem paid him back with the same great honor. Who had a more glorious burial than Yosef? Moshe himself was the one who was dealing with the Atzmas Yosef. And Moshe, because he was Mechabed Atzmas Yosef, Moshe Zach Atzmas Yosef, then B'Yisrael Gadol Imenu Shenemar V'Yigach Moshe Atzmas Yosef, Imai, Mi Gadol Mi Moshe, and who had a greater honor than Moshe Rabbeinu, Shaloi Nisasik Boy, Elah HaMokim. The Rebbeinu Shalom himself buried Moshe Rabbeinu, Shenemar V'Yikvar Osei Bagai, Zok the Gemara. Loi al Moshe Levad Amru. Not only is the Eibush to Osei with Moshe, al Kol HaTzadikim, with all Tzadikim, Shenemar V'Halech Lefanecha Tzidkecha, Kvoid Hashem Yasfech. So why was Moshe better than any other Tzadik? So the first one tell us, all the Tzadikim HaKadosh Baruch Hu was metapel with their neshama. Moshe Rabbeinu HaKadosh Baruch Hu was metapel with his guf. Zok the Heilige Gemara. Tana Rabbana. Shimshon be'einav Morat shenemar v'yom Shimshon alaviv. Oisa kachli. This woman from Timnah is the woman who I want. Ki yishar be'enai. She's right in my eyes. Lefichach nakru plishtim eseinav. That's why his eyes were poked. Shenemar v'yachzu plishtim v'yinakru eseinav. Was it a bad thing that it chose this woman? Adarabba. His parents didn't realize that Hashem wanted this wife for him, because that was all part of his scheme to conduct guerrilla warfare. Zok Gemara doesn't make a difference. Sure, Hashem wanted it, but Lamaisa, this was because this woman caught his eye.
Can you pause for 1 second?
I have to take a break and pause for 1 moment. I apologize. I'm just going to pause for 1 minute.
Akiva, what's
Yes,
your
sir.
issue with what's your issue with lawyers?
I'm not. All I'm saying is that that's what lawyers specialize in, is that they're able to find the weakness in any case and expose it and make it that it's
No, I'm
really
kidding.
invalidates the whole thing. What's your issue with lawyers?
My issue? How long do you
Yeah.
have for me?
It's amazing. Listen, the same way that the Torah would, if let's say somebody is full of chatoim, they'll find one good thing about him and expand it over the whole thing, right? And say, okay, this sample, this positive sample is really reflective of the entire case or the entire person. While a lawyer may do it Depends if it's for his benefit or not. I mean, if you had to defend this woman, what would you do?
Added to that, and that's why I don't do that for a living.
Oh, you mean family law?
I'm a real estate lawyer. I don't. I'm not defending anybody.
Yeah, but at a certain point, you come across some kind of litigation or negotiation, right? If you want out of a deal,
You look for your
right? If your
loopholes.
client wants out of a deal, you look for the loopholes, right? So loopholes
Hey, let's
can
go
work
back
for
to-
you or against you.
We went back to the lawyer situation.
All I know is this tzaddik ball lawyer.
Yeah, you see that was typical lawyer, Yosy. This was typical lawyer. An entire shiur, I make one comment about lawyer, that's what he picks on.
You
Actually,
notice I
that's the
didn't
one
pick it.
you
I
wanted
didn't
to
pick up
pick
on
up.
it. I
You
didn't
were
pick up on
provoking.
it doing. I didn't pick up on it doing the shiur. I waited till the Rebbe left us the color.
And he wants that badge as a positive for him.
Tanya, Rebbe Omer, Techilas Kilkulei be'Aza. His first kilkul was in Aza because that's when he engaged with the Zoyda. Leficha Chalaka be'Aza. That's why when he was jailed and subdued, finally, that happened in Aza as well. Techilas Kilkulei be'Aza dechseva yelach shimshim azosa v'yar shamisha Zoyda. Leficha Chalaka be'Aza dechseva yeridu oisay azosa. They took him to jail in Aza. Didn't he first go to Timnah? So you're right, but that was a marriage. That wasn't a Zoyna. Tchilas Kilkulai, the first really bad thing he did, Mia Ba'azaya. But he actually came, after he finished with the Zoyna, he fell in love with a woman called Delilah. Where does this name come from? Tanya Rabbi Omer El Mala Nikra Shma Dalila. Even if that wasn't her name, it was a perfect name for her. Ruya Aisha she took her Dalila. Dalila means she uprooted, she destroyed. Dildalas Kaichai, she uprooted his strength. Dildalas Libai, she uprooted his heart by getting him to reveal his secret. Dildalas Maisov, and she uprooted his Maisim. And the Gemara will explain. Once they got his hair, he lost his strength. He shared with her all of his heart. When she had his haircut, he lost his shashor shashkin. At that point, Shimshon didn't realize yet. The pasuk says, "Vatera delila ki higid la es kol liboy." She saw that he was telling her the truth. Mina yada. How is she able to tell that this time he was telling the truth? Amar B'chali Amarav Nikrin Divrei Emes. When someone's saying the truth, you could tell. Abaya Omar Yada Bay Ba'is Tzaddik. So this is Shimshon, who we're calling him a tzaddik. He would never say the name of Hashem L'Batala. Even the Amar Nazir Alikimani, when he told her that he was a Nazir, he said Nazir Alikim. He used Hashem's name. Amra Hashtavada Kushtaka. My husband Shimshon, who's a tzaddik, would definitely not say Shem Hashem L'Batala. But she was grinding down on his nerves to pressure him and pressure him and pressure him to divulge his secret. Pressure. She pressured him. How did she pressure him? At the end of Bia, when someone's about to climax, that's when she pulled away. That's torture for a man. And that's what she did to force him to divulge his secret. Now we're rewinding all the way back to the beginning of the story of Shimshon, when the Malach was instructing Shimshon's mother how she should prepare for Shimshon. And he said, don't drink wine and don't eat tameh. Tameh sounds like it's like non-kosher food, like chazer. My kol tameh, what do you mean by that? Are you telling me that she was eating non-kosher. It doesn't really mean dvarim tameim. It means things that a nazir can eat, like bread soaked in wine. It says, he had this jaw of a donkey, and Hashem made it crack open, and the water came out. So he ended up drinking from the jawbone of a donkey, a behemoth tmeya. Who evil a davar tamei? He lusted for a davar tamei. Therefore, his life was hanging on the water that came from a davar tamei. It says that the Ruach Hashem was Chal. This is at the beginning of the story of Shimshon. With the emergence of Shimshon on the scene, Yaakov's nevuah in his brachas was being fulfilled. Tichsiv Yidon, and Shimshon was from Sheva Don. Yidon Nochash Alei. Don should be like a serpent on the road. That's what Shimshon was, doing guerrilla warfare, hitting people that didn't know where they were hit from. Lefamoy b'machane Don, which it says in the pasuk by Shimshon that he was from Don. Omer b'dzok devei Reb Ami malamet shoyes shchina mishkas keshesh lefanav kazoy. Lefamo is like a pamon verimo, the Gemara is going to say. The Shechina was in front of Shimshon like a ringing bell. In other words, wherever Shimshon went, the Shechina was there with him. Clearly, Shimshon was no Balavera. He was a Kaddish V'Torah that the Shechina was with him wherever he went. Then the pasuk says that he was ben Tzira or ben Eshtaol. Amar Basi Tzira ben Eshtaol are Shnei Harim Gedolim. There were two great mountains, the Akron Shimshon v'Tachton Zebazeh, and Shimshon uprooted these two mountains and ground them together. The Ben Yoyada says all of these stories are not really to be taken literally. It's referring to very big things, deep things, Burmisa. I'm going to speak out some of them, but many of them I don't even understand when I'm reading the words of the Ben Yoyada. At this point, Shimshon started protecting and saving Klal Yisrael. Reb Chama said in the name of Reb Chanina, which will now take us on to today's daf Yud Amud Aleph. Zogt the Heilige Gemara. Oops, I'm at base. That's what I'm at. I'm sorry. Zogt the Heilige Gemara. Huchal shvu'asei shel Avimelech. Avimelech and Avraham Avinu made a pact. Diksev im tishkar li ulanini ulanechti. So they made a pact, you shouldn't lie to me or to my children or grandchildren. They made a pact not to fight with each other, not to harm each other. Zogt Rashi, Botla, Lashon Devora, you know why? Once Avimelech's children, the Pelishtim, violated the commitment not to hurt Klal Yisrael, the deal was off. There's actually a Shaila Halacha. If there's a contract where I have obligations to you and you have obligations to me, if you don't fulfill your obligations, does that automatically nullify my obligations? There's a Shaila Halacha, but there are those who say from here you don't have a raya, because if you analyze the psukim by Avimelech and Avraham Avinu, there was a special clause put in the agreement that the commitments to each other were hinged upon each one keeping their side of the deal. Zokti Gemara Vayter. By Yigdal Hanar, Shimshon grew up by Yercheu Hashem. Hashem blessed him. With what did Hashem bless him? Amar Avidu Marav, Shabirchei Ba'amosai. His Aver. Hashem blessed his Aver. What does that mean? Amosai Kivnei Adam. His aver was like a regular human size, but v'zaroi kanachal shoitiv. But it had an unlimited supply of zera. It would flow unlimited like a fire hose. What is the significance of that? Shimshon was trying to be a womanizer. If he's going to be a womanizer, he has to perform. So women would want him. So Hashem gave him the physical attributes so that he'd be able to be very attractive to women. Zokti ben Yoda Avada, you cannot understand these psukim with their pashtus. And what he says is, I can barely repeat it, but I will try. He said that the zera of Shimshon and the tashmish that he made with these goyish women were able to retrieve the netzatzes HaKedusha that were trapped within their tumah. And the zara kenachal shoitif means it was like a fire, like a pressure washer that would wash out all of the netzatzes HaKedusha from being trapped in their makam tumah. Again, these are hoichazachin, but clearly there's a lot more to the story of Shimshon than meets the eye. Another thing that Ben Yoyadi says is Kibnei Adam, meaning is like the great tzaddikim. He was like a great tzaddik, and he brings down Ben Yoyada that Shimshon was a Gilgal of Nodov. And one of the things that he was being misakin with all his zera was Nodov never married, so he was misakin that. But again, these are very high chazakin. We just need to know that whatever we learn about Shimshon, we can't think that he was someone who's not appropriate. He was a Kaddish V'tor, and these are things that are way beyond our understanding. Vayikra Shimshon el Hashem, when Shimshon was locked and chained, and he was blinded, and he was there in that big auditorium, he davened to Hashem, Vayomer Hashem Alekim, Zachreni na, remember me, V'chaskeni na, and strengthen me, Acha Pam Hazeh, just this time, V'nakma Nakaim Achas Mishtei Einai, and I should be able to take revenge, one revenge for my two eyes, me Pelishtim from the Pelishtim. Amarav, Amar Shimshon Lefek Kadosh Baruch Hu, Zechar li Esrim Shana Sheshafatati Yisrael. Remember the 20 years where I was a shoitiv of Klal Yisrael, and I was so careful not to take advantage of it. I didn't so much as ask anybody even to move something. Moshe Rabbeinu once said, I didn't even take one donkey. Shimshon said even more. Not only didn't I take anything from you, I never even asked someone to move a stick from me. So in that chus, Shimshon said, save me. This rewinds back to the beginning of the story, where after he had his first issue with his first wife, he decided that he's going to take vengeance against the Pelishtim for ruining his marriage and for cheating on the deal. So he took 300 foxes. Why would he take foxes? Look around, you can get raccoons in Toronto, unlimited. You can get skunks, even the occasional coyote. Why did he take a fox? Amar Rab Ivai bar Nagdi, Amar Rab Chia bar Abba, Amar Shimshon. Yavai mi shechazul acharev. Shimshon said, when foxes retreat from a predator, they don't just run straight away. They run in a very erratic fashion to try to dodge the predator. So take these animals that run around in a very erratic fashion, the Yiframi Pelishtim shechazru b'shvuasam, and let that take the revenge on the Pelishtim who reneged on their commitment, on their shvua, not to hurt Klal Yisrael. Tanya Amar B'Shimon HaChosid, Ben Kseifa Shal Shimshon Shisha Mama. In between the two shoulders of Shimshon was Shisha Mama. And most Mefarshim say this cannot be true, because then he would be about 100 amas high, and he wouldn't fit into any normal doorways or any normal buildings. A, B, we said earlier that his aver, his amma, was that of a regular person. If he was that big and his aver was that of a regular person, that would be highly out of proportion. So therefore, just means that he was so strong.
No, it's a regular person that had 60 amas between his shoulders.
I hear. That's not quite a regular person, but I hear. So the most important learn, it just means he was able to carry such great weight on his shoulders. Shenamar, it says, this is when he was with the Zaina. He fell asleep and they locked him up while he was sleeping. He Vayochas b'dalso shar ha'ir. He grabbed the doors of the city that he was tied to. Uv'shtei hamezuzot, and the two doorposts that the doors were connected to. Vayisoyim, when he just ripped them out and carried them imabriach with the big bolt that was on them. Vayosem al ksevov, and he carried them on his shoulders. Ugemiria, we know the doors themselves were 60 amas. That's huge. Now we're going to go fast forward to when he was actually captured after he lost his strength. And the pasuk says he was put into jail in Aza, and he became a grinder. By Yi Toichen the Vesasurim. Eschatoini Masker Yoim. Did you ever hear of a website called Grinder? Akiva, you know it's the male version of Tinder. It's called Grinder.
Okay, thank you for enlightening me. Okay.
So enlighten me.
It's a gay hookup site.
Oh, okay.
So it says he became a grinder. It says that Shimshon became a grinder in the Beis Asurim in the jail. Rabbi Yochanan, ain't china ala lashon aveira. Grinding means doing an aveira. This is a heterosexual aveira that we're talking about here. Grinding after my wife. In other words, it's talking about something in the mezana. Melamed, it teaches us to go echod ve'echod hevi lo yes ishtar leveisa asurim. Everybody wanted strong children, so they brought their wives to be mezana with Shimshon in jail. So they should have such very strong and powerful children.
So what's the? I mean, we've heard one story after the other here, and then this is a problem that we're talking about.
I hear.
Unless maybe these were married women, I guess
they were. Yeah, people brought their wives.
The others were shiksas.
I hear. If I'm not mistaken, is it possible that Shimshon was the father of Goliath and Orpah was one of those women? Is there a measure that says that? I think I have a vague recollection of such a.
No, I don't think the timeline works.
No.
I mean, I don't think so, but because there had to have been. There's many shoftim still after Shimshon, right? Shimshon was one of the earlier shoftim.
Okay.
And he was towards the end, I think. I'll look it up.
We have to see who Goliath's father was. If you're a mizana, ishtoi mizanenes halach. Because that your wife will be mizana. Shenemar im nifta libi al isha. If my heart becomes seduced by a woman, while Pesach rei arafti, and I was ambushing the door of my friend. In other words, I was mizana with my friend's wife. What's going to happen? There's going to be someone grinding on my wife, and bending over to her. Achrin. So v'haini damri inchi, and that's where the saying comes from. Bekari ve'itze bebetzini. They each have their own indulgences. He wants this style, she wants that style, but they both go after the same thing. The Summer Rebbe has a beautiful word that Chaim Tzvi always tells me over. It says, "The ish ki yinaf es eses ish, the ish ki yinaf es eshes re'eim." Correct the Summer Rebbe. Why is there this double expression? The ish ki yinaf es eshes ish, the ish ki yinaf es eshes re'eim. Zogt the Summer Rebbe, the ish ki yinaf es eshes ish. You know why someone was noyef with this married woman? Because her husband, because her husband also did snus with somebody, because he did snus with somebody, that caused that someone did snus with his wife, which is exactly what our Gemara says over here. The problem that they ask here is we said that when does the Sotah work, that's bismancha ish menuka ma'aven. But if the husband's guilty as well, then this Sotah doesn't work. So if we're saying the only reason why a woman does snus is because her husband did snus, so how could you ever do Sotah? So the answer, no, whenever a husband does nus, his wife will do nus. But that doesn't mean his wife will not do nus if he doesn't do nus. Although the Ben Yehuda asks, you find many lowlifes that are married to very, very erlicha women. So I don't remember what he says, but there's a discussion about it. Shimshon don es Yisrael ka'aviem shabashamayim. You see what a holy person Shimshon was. He was down Klal Yisrael like the Rebbeinu Shalom. Shenemar don yodin amoy ka'acha shifta Yisrael, referring to Shimshon. From Rabbi Yochanan Shimshon al Shemoy Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Nikra. The name Shimshon comes from the name of Hashem. Shenemar ki shemesh umogein Hashem elikim. Shemesh, Rashi says, is like a wall, and the protection, the shield is Hashem. So Shimshon is Shemesh Umogein. For Gemara, if Shimshon is the name of Hashem, El Me'ata Lo Yimacher, so you shouldn't be allowed to erase that name. So Gemara, no, it's not Mamash Hashem of Hashem, it's just a name that discusses the attributes of Hashem. El Me'en Shemoy Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ma HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Megan Al Kololim Kuloi, just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu protects the whole world, Av Shimshon Megan B'Doiroi Al Yisrael. For Rabbi Yochanan, Bilam Chiga Baragle Achas. Bilam was a cripple with one of his legs. Shenemar Vayelach Shefi. The Pasuk is quiet, but Shefi could also mean that he's limping. Shaf Meduchte, his leg is dislocated. And the Mefarshim tell us, where did Bilam's leg get injured? When his Asain smashed it against the gate. Shimshon Chigar B'Shtei Raglav. Shimshon was handicapped on both of his legs. Shenemar Shefifoin. Pasuk means it's a serpent, but Shefifai means a double Shefi on the road.
Always or just at the end?
I'm not sure. If you think about it, I mean, he was a very big seducer. I'm not sure exactly how seductive someone with two crippled legs are, but I'm not sure. That's a good art.
By the way, just Googling about I wrote Goliath's father. It brings down that Orpah was his mother, but it didn't say father. On some site. I don't know if it's a reliable site.
I believe Orpah was Mizana with Shimshon, and that's where Goliath came from, but I don't know if I'm not 100% sure. Okay, so let's see the Gemara weiter.
I'm sorry, Yosy, I don't think the timeline works. So it was a little bit after done. Right? Because that's when Rus came, right? When Elimelech left, and there was a starvation.
After Shimshon?
I think it was after.
It was way after.
I'm not mistaken, it was about
long before Malchus Beis David, and this was right before Malchus Beis David.
Well, no, this was still a few generations before. Remember, Boaz, Rus had a few. There was a few.
Yeah, but Boaz could have lived a long time.
Yeah, but I think that Shimshon was dead already before Orpah. Orpah was Mizana after.
Orpah wasn't even on the scene yet.
No, Orpah was a little girl then. if she was born at all. If she was born at all. That's why I think the Shvait Shvaitim happens after done. I'll look it up a little more.
5 people were created with supernatural strengths. And they all got punished, so to speak, even though they had these strengths. Shimshon b'koichai, with his strength. Chol b'tzavaret. Chol had a beautiful neck. He was a very tall, good-looking man. Avshalom b'sari. Avshalom had beautiful hair. Tzidkiah b'edav. Tzidkiah had very good eyes. Rashi says he doesn't know where it comes from, but some of Farshim tell us that he had infrared vision. Because Tzidkiah knew that his kingdom was crashing down, so he built a tunnel from Yerushalayim to Yericho. And the fact that he was going to run down through that tunnel meant that he was able to see in the pitch black. Okay? And Asa Beraglov. Asa had feet. Again, Rashi says, I don't know where it comes from, but the first moving down, that he was able to do certain maneuvers with his feet that were supernatural. Eventually, Hashem took away his koyach. Chol b'tzavaroi, he was killed with his neck. When someone falls on the sword, they fall on their neck because the sword normally cuts a neck, Rashi says. Avshalom b'sari kedabinu meim l'kamon, the Gemara is going to elaborate on Avshalom later on. Tzidkiah be'ena of dechsev, there's ene tzidkiah either. They blinded Tzidkiah's eyes. Asa b'raglav dechsev, rak la'esik nasoi cholas raglav, and Asa got old, his legs got sick. V'amar Rabbi Yehuda amarav shechsosei padagra, he had padagra, which the Ars Scroll teaches as gout. And I can tell you, gout makes you shout out loud because it's very painful. Amar le marzutra bareder Rav Nachman le Rav Nachman. Hechidami padagra. What is exactly the symptoms of padagra? Amar le kemachat bebasar achai, like a needle in the skin of the meat of a live person. I can tell you, I've taken needles and I've had gout, and maybe in its very initial stages it feels like a needle prick. In its later stages, it's so painful. There's no words to describe it. We know Yoda. How does Reb Nachman know exactly how gout feels? He had gout. He heard it from his Rebbe. He knows it because of his. He knows it because of his kedusha.
Yosy, our Rebbe had it.
Indeed, which one? Rebellion?
Rebellious suffered from gout.
Wow. Doris Rova. Why was Asa punished? When he mandated that everybody do work for the kingdom, he actually made the Talmidei Chachamim also do that work. There was no exception to his demand. Shenemar Ramelch Asa, his Shemiah as Kol Yehuda Ein Noki. Nobody was clean, nobody was free of this work. My Ein Noki, what does it mean Ein Noki? Because it says that when a person gets married, Noki Yeh Lebeisai. So when it says here Ein Noki, means even somebody who's Noki everywhere else, like a Chosin and a Kala, they would have to come and do this work. So even Talmidei Chachamim, and that's what caused his illness. Ksiv it says, Vayeret Shimshim Timnasa, when he found his first wife. Uksiv, it says by Tamar, when she knew that Yehuda was coming, it says, Hine Chamecha Oila Timnasa. So the question is, do you go down to Timnah, or do you go up to Timnah? Is it at the top of the hill, or is it at the bottom of the hill? Amar Belazar, it's figurative. Shimshin Shenisganaba, Shimshin, who was ridiculed and ruined because of what he did there. Chive Yerida. Yehuda Shenis'alaba, Yehuda that was Nis'ala with it. Ksiv Aliyah. It says Aliyah. That's why we built Malchus Beis David. Rabbi Shmuel ben Achmeni Amar, no, it's literal. But there's Shnei Timnoisai. Tada Yerida, one was in the valley. The Chada Aliyah, one was in the mountain. Rabbi Amar, it was on the slope. Chada Timnavoy, but it was on the slope. Doesn't Gisa Yerida. If you're coming from the top of the mountain, then you're going to go down to get to Timnos. Udasim Hagis, if you're coming from lower on the mountain, you're going to go up the slope. Aliyah. You're going like other cities that are on slopes, Verdunya, Ubibari, Vishuka Denerish. It says about Tamar, Vatesha Pesach Einai. She sat at the crossroads, is how we touched it. Amr Alexandri, Malamed Shaholcha V'Yoshva Law B'Pischa Shal Avram Avinu. The Pesach Einai was the door of Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu had a 24/7 hotel, where he served people, took care of people. It was a very popular spot. That's where she hung out. Mokam Shekol Einayim Tzoifos Leroisa. Everybody wanted to go there. She was in a very populated spot. There was a city that was called Einayim, and she went to the opening of Einayim. What happened was that she made sure to give eyes to her words. In other words, she made sure that whatever she was doing was appropriate, was mutter. Kishetava, when Yehuda came to say, I want to have relations with you, Amrullah, he asked her, Shema Nachrisat. So he's going to someone who he thinks is a Zayna. He says, I don't just engage with any Zayna, only Jewish Zaynas. Are you Jewish? Amrullah Giyarish, and she said, I'm a Giyarish. So he says, okay, but are you a married woman? I don't engage in this nus with married women. Shema Esha Shizat. Amrullah, she said, no, Pnuya Ani, I'm a Pnuya. He said, how do you know? Shema Kibel Bach Avicha Kedushin. Maybe your father was Makabel Kedushin for you, and you might be an Esha Shish, and you don't even know about it. Amrullah Yisaimani. I'm an orphan. And she said, my mother and she said, even though I was married to Er and Oina, I was married off by my mother or my brother, which is Duraban, and I made meal. so I'm not even your daughter-in-law. And that was for her, not for him. Rashi ponders, we know there are some shittas who hold that she was the daughter of Shem, and therefore she was a Bas Kohen, and that's why they paskened on her that she should be burnt. But the question is, how could she have been the daughter of Shem? It wouldn't line up. She would be way too old for that, and she wouldn't be a Ktana anymore. And if she's not a Ktana, then her own marriage would be a good Kedusha. So Rashi says, could be this Gemara here does not hold that she was the daughter of Shem. Okay, Zok to Gemara weiter. Shema Tameat, maybe you're Thomas Nida. I'm going to tell you on this Torah. This goes back to the conversation that Avram had with Avimelech at the beginning, and it says that Avram built an Eshel. What is an Eshel? Amar Shlokish Melamed Shasa Partis. Avram made an orchard. V'nata by Kol Mini Megadim. He planted beautiful, delicious fruit. Beautiful Nechemia have a machlokes what this was. Chadam or Partis. One says it was an orchard. The Chadam or Pundak, it was an inn where you could feed people and accommodate people. He planted a Partis. You plant, but you don't plant a building. You could, the word yita is also used to describe a tent. Now, this Eshel, the Yehuda wants to say it was both. It was actually a yeshiva. It was actually a yeshiva. He has Rosh Tevis for the Aleph Shin Lamed, but I forgot what it is. But it's a place where Talmidei Chachamim learn, and therefore it had a dormitory, and it had a dining room, and that's what the Pardes and the Pundak was all about, was the house of yeshiva. And there must have been a Baal Tshuva yeshiva, because we're soon going to see that in his yeshiva, he brought people the awareness of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Vayikra Sham b'Shem Hashem Kel Elam. What does that mean? Amr Shlakish Al Tikri Vayikra. He called Ela Vayakri. He caused other people to call. And now we'll turn on to Daf Yud Amud Beis for the final Amud of tonight. Ela Vayakri Malamed Shehikri Avram Avinu L'Shmoy Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He made HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name be spoken Bepek Kol Oiver V'Shah, in the mouth of anybody who passed by. Ketzad, how did he do this? After they ate and drank, they wanted to get up to thank Avram for his wonderful accommodation. You ate for me, you think? You ate from the Rebbeinu Shalom. You should praise and thank and bless Lemisha Amar V'Haya Olam. And that's how we got them into appreciating the Rebbeinu Shalom. Getting back to the story of Yehuda and Tamar. Yehuda, he thought she was a Zoina. Why? He kisses off on her because her face was covered. Frank Gemara, we show him the kisses off on her. She was sneistic. She was a woman standing in a sneistic fashion. Why would you think she's a Zoina? Amar Belazar, the point is, he thought she was a Zoina because he didn't recognize her as his daughter-in-law. She kisses up on her b'beis Chamel. Since she was so sneistic, when she came to Yehuda, he didn't recognize her. Tamar Shmuel by Nachmeni Amar Bernisa, called Kala Shitznua b'beis Chamel, a Kala that's sneistic in the house of her father-in-law. Zoicha shall merit the yoytin mimena malachim u'neviim. Malachim and neviim will come out of her. Minolan, how do you know this? Mitamar. Neviim that came out of her, Dechsev, Chazon Yeshayahu ben Hamoed. And Malachim is Midavid. Vamar Belevi, David Zemisaris, Piadenu, Me'avisenu. We know this, that Amitz and Amatzia, Amitz was a Navi, Amatzia was a king. Achamavu, they were brothers, and they were Einiklach of Tamar. They saw that she was pregnant, and they thought she was Mizana. So they condemned her to death, and they were taking her to burn. He Motzaei. Now, Mutzus means she was found, she was discovered. It doesn't mean she's being forcefully removed. Right? The more he Misutzeis Miboile. If we're talking about her being forcefully removed to give her Sreifa, it should say he Misutzeis. Amar Belazar, what it means is La'achar shenimtzu simoneh. After she found the simonim, her simonim that she had, that she was going to show Yehuda and say, who does the stick belong to? Who does the signet ring to belong to? Who does the sack belong to? Those simonim were lost and they were found. How were they lost? Because Ba Samo Berichka, the Sultan came and hid them because he wanted Tamar to get killed because he wanted to avoid the creation and the establishment of Malchus Beis David. But Gavriel came to the rescue. Ba Gavriel v'kirvan, Hani d'chsev, and that's what the pasuk means when it says, Lam natseach al yoinas elim rechoikim leDavid michtav. The rechoikim were thanking Hashem for bringing the rechoikim, for bringing the simanim. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mishash and Nisrachtu simaneha, when her simanim were taken away, meaning she was not going to have a way to subtly and discreetly advise Yehuda that she's innocent. Nasis kiyoina ilamas. She became like a yoina who wouldn't speak. She wouldn't divulge the secret to embarrass him. Yoina, why a yoina? The Mefarshim tell us because a yoina is always loyal to its mate. A yoina doesn't live polygamous. A yoina has a mate for life. So the Gemara is using that to show that she was a holy woman. The David michtam. What does that mean? She yatzim imenu David shayamach v'tam. David came out of Tamar, who was mach, soft, tam, and complete. L'chol davar, l'chol for everybody. Period. Davar acher. Another pshat is michdam shayim makasai tama. The place where an 8-year-old boy normally gets wounded, he was complete over there. In other words, shenoilat keshehumal. David was born already with the bris. Davar acher michdam. He's small. Kishem shebekatnuso hiktin atzma etzel misha gadol mimenu l'moy Torah. Just like when he was small, he wasn't a great king. He was memayit himself to accept the Torah of someone greater than him. Tach begadluso the bach tiksin hiktin atzma etzel misha gadol mimenu l'moy Torah. He also was an honor when he lowered himself to learn Torah.
What story is it talking about when he was a cotton?
I don't know. Rashi just says that when he was young, Kodim Shamalach, before he was a king, he. I
mean, they're just assuming that he was humble before he was a king.
I guess so. And the Chiddush is that even after he was a king, he was humble. Okay, let's see what the Gemara says. Weiter. V'hi shilcha el chamel. She sent discreetly to her father-in-law. Lemars, tell him as follows. Leish asher ela loy anoichi har. Frag the Gemara, why is she beating around the bush? V'teima la meimer. Why don't you just tell him these are your children? Amar Rab Sotah bar Tovia, Amar Rav, Amar lo, Amar Rav Chana bar Bizna, Amar Rab Shimon Chasida, Amar lo, Amar Rab Yochanan, Amar Rab Shimon Yochi. Noich lo la'adam shiyapol atzma l'soich kif sheneish. It's better to allow yourself to be burnt in the fire, v'al yalben pnei chaveri barabim, and not humiliate your friend. Minolon, where do we know this rule from Mitomar? Because she said, hacker no, but she didn't divulge the secret.
Who did she learn it from?
I guess she appreciated it on her own. It's funny you asked that question because we learn from Avram Avinu that God lachnosas yorchim yoshim kabos pnei shchina, because Avram ran to be machnas to orchim even though he's in the middle speaking to Hashem. So they asked, how did Avram himself know? How did Avram know? So one of the terutzim they say is that the fact that Avram was able to even see that they were orchim, the fact that Hashem made it that Avram should see orchim, was how Avram knew that Hashem wanted him to go be metapel with them. So I'm not sure how you can apply that here. But
right, that's the question. She had to know what the halacha is, somehow to embarrass him, right? Not to embarrass him.
I don't know. Okay, haker na. The words that she used was haker na. Recognize this. Amrab Chamer Chanina, the haker biser la'aviv. Using the word haker, Yehuda informed his father that Yosef was killed. V'haker bisruhu. So when they had to bring something to his attention that was not so geschmack, they used the haker as well. They were hackers. V'haker biser, he said haker no haker son is binchahi. V'haker bisruhu haker no lami. Now, interesting enough, the Ben Yehuda says that she used the word hakanah to bring to Yehuda's attention. Yehuda, you already see that you're suffering from midah keneged midah. You used haker, and now we're confronting you with haker. Could you imagine if you let me get killed, what the midah keneged midah of that will be? So she was encouraging him to announce that in fact he was the father. Zog to Gemara weiter. Ein na elaloshem bakasha. She was begging. Amar le bevakasha mimcha. Hager pnei baracha. Realize the Rebbeinu Shalom have your shemayim. Val talam einecha mimeni. Don't look away from me. Vayaker Yehuda. Yehuda did recognize. Vayomer tzatka mimeni. Hainu da Amar Chanan bar Bizna. Amar Shimon Chasida. Yosef shekiddush Shem Shemayim b'seiser. Yosef made a kiddush Shem Shemayim, but it was quiet. It was in a secluded area with Eshes Petifar. Zocha v'asifu l'isachas mishmoi shel Kadosh Baruch Hu. They added a hey to his name. Dichsev Eidos b'Yosef Sam. Yehuda shekiddush Shem Shemayim b'fer Hesya. Zocha v'nikra klulay al shmoi shel Kadosh Baruch Hu. All of Hashem's name is in Yehuda's name. Even Shahida. Amar tzotke mimenu yotza baskel v'amar ata hitzalta tamar u'shnei bonea mina or. You saved them from getting burnt up. Chayecha, I promise you, shani matzel b'schuscha gimel mibonecha mina or. Maninu, who are those? Chananya, Mishal, v'Azarya, tzotke mimenu mina yoda. How did Yehuda know that these were his children? Forget. Maybe she was mizana a second time. As a matter of fact, if she was a basula at the time, which they say she was, because Erevayim were only boiler shaloi kadarka, if she was a basula at the time, a woman does not become pregnant from her first bia. So bizarre, if anything, he should have known that these were not his children. Zok to Gemara Yotza Baskel Ba'amra Mimeni Yotzu Kavushim. These hidden secrets came from me, is what the Rebbeinu was telling him. But the Ben Yehuda explains Mimeni Yotzu Kavushim is a word that's used to describe if a woman breaks her basulim with her fingers, she breaks it by herself. Hashem said, I put into her mind to break her basulim so that she would become expecting when she has relations with you. He didn't know her anymore. What does that mean? Amar Shmuel Saba Hamoed Rav Shmuel Bar Ami Mishmei de Rav Shmuel Bar Ami. Even Shayada, once he had relations with her, Shovloi Pasak Mimena. He didn't stop having relations. He remained married to her. How do you know Lo Yosef means he didn't stop? A large sound that didn't stop. So Mamela Yehuda remained married to her. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we're almost right up to date. Tomorrow, Baruch Hashem, we're going to learn at 7 a.m. and we're going to learn at around 9:30 after the 8 o'clock minyan. A good tavach, a good night, everybody. A good Yom Tov. We should have a wonderful, wonderful Yom Tov.
Hang on, Yosy, before you close the press conference. Number one, I learned yesterday's daf already, and I was hoping I learned with you. Maybe this Sotah doesn't blow up, but I see in your shiur the ending was the same. I was hoping for a little different ending. How did the Torah go on the second night?
Baruch Hashem, it worked out very well.
Did you entertain? Did you do what the Rav asked? How was it?